Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Growing Up with Godzilla. My name is Donny Winter, as you know, and this is my show where I have conversations with Godzilla fans about how we've grown with the character and franchise over time. We are in the midst of season 4 of the show, which, again, I can't believe we're here, but here we are. And I'm excited. I'm pretty stoked because, of course, we've had familiar faces returning, but we are also having some new faces on the show this season. And today's episode, I am pretty excited to welcome on a familiar face, a name you will recognize, a person who has been a pretty significant presence in the Godzilla YouTubing space. And without further ado, I would like to welcome on the iconic Dman 1954. Hello.
Hello, what's up?
Yay. It's so good to have you here.
It's great to be here. I love it.
No, I was just telling you earlier that you probably are one of my most requested guests from viewers. And I mean, obviously that's a huge compliment to you because you are absolutely beloved in the Godzilla fandom.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, like, and it's obviously you have a long history of creating community here, and we'll delve into that. But no, I usually begin by like reflecting on whether or not we've met before, and I think this is our first time meeting.
It's our first time.
It is our first time meeting. So
yeah, I unfortunately I don't have a ton of money, so like G-Fest is not on the table for me. I went in 2019. That's the only year I ever went because I was taken there by my dad as like a graduation present. You know, I graduated high school, so he took me to G-Fest as like a present for that.
What a great present.
I know, it was awesome. It was really incredible. It was awesome. And I would love to go, but like, I just don't have the money. So unfortunately, I haven't really gotten to be like, there's so many people that have like this really great community. And so often it'll be people that have known each other online for years. And then they meet at G-Fest. And I had that once and it was incredible. And then I've never had it again. So like, hopefully someday I can get back out there.
Well, I have no doubt that you will. Did you get a chance to meet Megumi? Wait, no, Megumi Odaka was the year before that. You went in 2019. Did you get to meet Akira Takarada?
I sure did. Oh, I got stories for that.
Oh my goodness. Well, we're gonna delve into those because I'm pretty stoked. I also went to the 2019 G Fest, so maybe in some
we bumped
ethereal
into each other
way,
or something.
yeah, we crossed paths. I have no idea. So, well, obviously, we're here because I really want to delve into your history as a Godzilla fan, right? And I've mentioned this on the show before. We all have different entry points. We all have different things that got us into Godzilla. We have different trajectories we've taken in our fanship, if that makes sense. So how were you first introduced to Godzilla all the way from the beginning?
There's no origin story to it, you know, like there wasn't a point when I was scrolling through the TV guide and I saw Godzilla and I clicked on it and was like blown away by it. It was just that when I was a baby, just born, my dad owned a bunch of Godzilla VHSs. So he just always had them on, you know? And so there's literally not a single memory in my entire life where Godzilla wasn't in it. And some of the oldest videos that are of me, like videos where I'm like 2 or 3 years old, are of me playing with Godzilla toys or like surrounded by Godzilla. In fact, like the oldest memories that I have in my head, if like just fragments of memories, I remember being a really little baby. And when my parents, when they lived together, we lived in this house and my dad had this basement office. Like, I think if I'm remembering correctly, I think it was like sectioned off by glass with like a glass door. And I remember he had this carpet mat, you know, for like your desk chair, so you're not rolling on the carpet. It was like a transparent plastic carpet mat, but the bottom of it had these like little teeth that would grip into the carpet.
Stick things, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I would sit there and I'd put my hand under it and I'd crunch on them and I'd be playing with my toys. And we had this tiny little box TV, at least in my head, I remember it being like a little box TV up, like kind of up on the wall. And I would have him turn on 1976 King Kong over and over and over again. Oh. And I just watch it on loop, but he would skip to, you know, the discovery of the island. So I'd skip the whole first act of the movie. And that's just what I would do. And then I'd go upstairs and we'd turn on, you know, Godzilla's Revenge or whatever on VHS. And so like I was fortunate in that I didn't ever have to go like, oh, I really want to watch Godzilla, but it's not on TV, you know, and like I always had the VHSs. I think I had Godzilla King of the Monsters with Raymond Burr. I had Mothra versus Godzilla, Invasion of Astro Monster, Godzilla's Revenge, Godzilla versus the Sea Monster, King Kong 33, King Kong 76, and War of the Gargantuas.
Wow.
So those were the ones I like. Those are my core memories of Godzilla. Those are the ones that I have all of these childhood memories of. And then over time, because I grew up in the 2000s, you know, they were becoming accessible on DVD. So I was getting brought into like, I never really experienced the Godzilla drought that everybody else did. I was always discovering and I always had access to it. So it was just because my dad showed them to me because he liked them.
Yeah, like growing up in the 2000s, like especially if you were growing up in the early 2000s, like that was a very unique time to be a Godzilla fan because there was a lot of hype. Like, I know a lot of people don't often remember it, but like, especially when Tokyo SOS was coming out and like Godzilla Final Wars was coming out, like people were like salivating at the bit for any sort of news about those. And of course, we would get delayed news, but there were sites like, I don't know how many of the older sites you might remember, but there was a site called Tokyo Monsters. I remember that I lived on that site because they would upload like clips from like the new movies. And on my poor dial-up internet back then, it took me like 6 hours to load a 30-second trailer. But you know, I waited those hours to do that. So it was great. But you know, so you said you were like a baby when you were introduced.
I was a baby. There is not a time in my life where I don't remember Godzilla.
That is a pretty unique experience because like over the course of 4 seasons of doing this, like I have been kind of committing to memory like everyone's different entry points, and everyone's common entry point seems to be like 5 to 8 years old. And for you, you're earlier than that, which I think is really cool. Like that is so unique.
I mean, I would watch those things on repeat, you know, and like some of those movies were getting DVD releases when I was still like really little. So I remember, for instance, like I had GMK on a DVD, which is funny because like some of these movies are kind of scary for kids, but because I was just with them all of the time, they just weren't for me. The only one that was scary for me was War of the Gargantuas. Would give me nightmares all the time, and I was terrified of that movie, but I loved to watch it. But like GMK, we had this van that had like a DVD player built into the roof for the kids in the back. And I would watch that thing on repeat in that DVD player to the point where it had got stuck and we couldn't eject it anymore.
Oh no.
And so I lost that copy of it. I got another copy of GMK on DVD, and I think we moved from an apartment, and again I lost it. And so I had to get it a third time, and that's the one I still have. But like I was always with Godzilla. And I remember as a little kid, I used to like argue tooth and nail with my family members, like my extended family, like, no, he's not a dinosaur. He is Godzilla. It's a different thing. He's not a dinosaur. Dinosaurs don't do the things he does. They're not as big as he is. You know, he's not a dinosaur. And I'd argue with kids at school about like the same thing. He's not a dinosaur. Nobody at school. I felt like as a little kid in elementary school, nobody was in the Godzilla hype. Like nobody cared about Godzilla. And even from like there's videos of me in first grade dressed up as Godzilla at elementary school. Nobody liked Godzilla. I'd get made fun of for it because it wasn't, Godzilla's not as cool as like a T-Rex or whatever is what they would, you know. And so like it took until I think like third grade or fourth grade, I think third grade, for me to get my friend Luke to start watching Godzilla movies. And he became obsessed with them. And so at least I had somebody to talk to about Godzilla, but Godzilla was so uncool growing up. At school, Godzilla was uncool. I was also the biggest Ben 10 geek, which was cool when we were little. And then like third, fourth grade, people were like, oh, you know, Godzilla Ben 10, that's baby stuff. And so going into middle school was like, Godzilla became a big secret that I was into Godzilla. And so it was not something I'd bring up. I really kind of almost moved away from the fandom, and that, you know, I'd still watch the movies and have a good time with them, especially if I was sick. I would watch those VHSs every time I was homesick from school. But I wouldn't talk about Godzilla, and I wasn't as into it. And I became into other things, like more adult things, like The Walking Dead became my big obsession for middle school. And then thankfully that 2014 movie came out and made Godzilla cool for people again. And then ever since then, it's been chill to talk about the fact that you like Godzilla. And so I appreciate what that movie did for my childhood in turning around the discourse on Godzilla at school.
So in a way, you were kind of impacted by the drought of the 2010s, because I do think that Godzilla at that time, being so far removed from the pop cultural conversation,
True.
I think that's what made people, even like kids, start being like, Godzilla, like what, like that. I'm sorry that you had to go through that. I resonate a lot with that isolation and people kind of picking on me for liking Godzilla. And what was ironic is that these people who were like, Godzilla is childish, these were the same people being like, Pokemon's the best thing since sliced bread. And I love Pokemon too, don't get me wrong, but I'm just like, you're telling me that Godzilla is more childish than Pokemon is?
Right, yeah. Like, kids would make fun of you for liking Godzilla, but then they'd be like, you should check out the Power Rangers. And it'd be like, this is even more for kids than Godzilla.
I know, and I'm just like, okay, all right now. But I do agree with you completely that I think 2014 did like an excellent job of like reinstating Godzilla back into that pop cultural ebb and flow, because because the character needed it. Absolutely. So, and if we ever have to go through a drought that long again, I don't know what I'm going to do.
I think luckily I think we're at a point where like the internet has evolved enough to where if we go through another drought, at least there'll be a community that I don't think will go anywhere. You know what I mean? Like, growing up as a kid, I wasn't into online forums. I was too young to be allowed to do that stuff. Like, I'd have supervision when I was on YouTube, and I'd be like allowed, 20 minutes of computer time a week or whatever. And so it was like, I didn't find online forums. I didn't have an online community. So it was really just me by myself liking Godzilla. My brothers did not like Godzilla because I overplayed it too much. It was always on, so they turned on it.
Oh no!
And so it was just me, and it was like,
they were burnt out.
Yeah, big time.
Goodness.
But I have faith now that at least if we go through another drought, at least there will be people you can talk to about it, even though it will suck to wait for more stuff.
Right. Okay, so you talked middle school. So in middle school, you were like, I'm keeping this internalized. I'm not really articulating it or sharing it. How about as like beyond middle school, like so into high school, like did it stay that way or did it like
It's weird. So like, yeah, in elementary school, I only had my friend Luke who watched Godzilla. And he got really into like the stuff that I didn't necessarily, like the games, like those the Pipeworks games. He got really into those. And I didn't have gaming consoles as a kid, so it was like nothing. I couldn't really get into it. And in fact, one of the things that I like cringe about when I think back to that time period was I remember getting into a super angry argument with him in like 5th grade over if there was such a monster as Crystal Axe, because in what year, 2008 it was posted. I probably discovered it in 2009, but Cinemassacre's Godzillathon was like this explosion moment where it was like, holy wait, there's how many of these things? And it like reshaped everything I had known about Godzilla up to that point was from my VHSs. And so, I'd like string together what I thought the timeline of these movies was. And, Godzilla winds up looking so different in the Millennium series. So that means a GMK must come during the Showa series. But obviously I didn't even know these were things yet. I just thought that this was the order of the movies. But, Godzilla's got round spines in this movie. So this goes with the earlier ones. And so I like had my own version of what these movies were and what the timeline was. And because the VHS cover for Godzilla versus the Sea Monster that I has, Godzilla looks very feminine in it. In my opinion, it looks like he has these big eyelashes. So it's like that movie has the female Godzilla, and that must be the one that eventually lays babies with Matthew Broderick, So I'm like trying to create this timeline in my head. Cinemassacre blows the door open where I realize there's this whole other world of Godzilla that I need to get in on. And so now I know all the movies because of him. And I know there's no monster called Crystal Axe. So I just argue tooth and nail with my friend at school. There is no monster called Crystal Axe. To the point where I'm so upset about it, I'm going home ranting to my brother about it. And he's like, well, maybe he's getting Crystalax confused for Space Godzilla because, you know, they're both made of crystals. So then I go to school.
Yeah.
I go to school and I'm like, Luke, you're just dead wrong. I'm telling you right now, you're thinking of Space Godzilla. And the way he described Crystalax is it's a big ball of crystals with a face. And I was like, I think when Space Godzilla flies around in space and he's in his little ball form, that's Crystalax, and you're just wrong. You shouldn't be arguing
that
this
literally is the exact description of flying Space Godzilla. Right?
I know. And so like, you're dead wrong about this. And then years later I found out he was absolutely right, and that these video games exist. And so I get the video games and I try to get into those, but like I didn't have a way to save memory on my Wii. Mm-hmm. So I could only play the first levels over and over again before I'd like have to turn off the Wii because I'd used all my playtime for the day. And so I never progressed in those games. And so I don't have the connection to those. Other people did, but anyways, when I got to middle school, yes, I really had tried to distance myself from the fact that like I was still really into Godzilla and Ben 10 at home, but I became really into The Walking Dead and horror movies and all this stuff because it was the more acceptable thing to talk about.
Yeah.
And so I became like the big horror guy at school. And then that 2014 movie, I woke up one morning, checked YouTube, and there was a trailer uploaded by Legendary, Godzilla 2014 trailer. And I thought, this is a fan-made trailer because I have been burned over and over again by Godzilla 2012 and fan edit trailers and Takashi Yamazaki's Always Sunset on 3rd Street, 2nd Street, 3rd Street, 2, where it's 3rd Street, right?
I think
Always Sunset on 3rd Street 2, where Godzilla's at the start and people are claiming this is Godzilla 2012. I was so obsessed with this idea of a Godzilla 2012. I was told by my friends at school that, you know, did you hear, this is obviously 2011. Did you hear there was a big, you know, tsunami in Japan? No, I did not hear that. Yeah, I think that there's probably not going to be another Godzilla movie for a while because I hear it's pretty bad over there. And so I think Godzilla 2012 is off the table. But there's these clips online that just keep like these fan edited trailers. And I've been burned so many times by it. And I'm like, there was a tsunami. They're not making another Godzilla movie. One day in 2013 or whatever, December 2013, I come down, I'm getting ready for school. I sit down, my dad's going to pick me up to drive me. I open my phone. I see on YouTube right there on the homepage, this trailer. I click on it thinking it's a fan-made trailer. And I was more excited than I've ever been because I was like, this is the greatest fan-edited thing I've ever seen. I don't even know how they got this footage. I don't know what Godzilla movie this would have come from. And then it like clicked the last second that it isn't a fan trailer and it really is real. And I rushed to the car and was telling my dad, like, you got to see this. This is a thing. And he's like, is this real? So we all got excited about it. And then that trailer made it so that suddenly at school, people were like, hey, did you see that there's like a new Godzilla movie coming out? And like it for the first time became like acceptable to talk about Godzilla to people that wasn't my friend Luke. And it blew my mind. And then the movie came out and even better, it was a good movie. And so like, and it was a serious movie, which was really important because it reshaped all of the sudden Godzilla is no longer for babies. And for the first time in my entire life, people are now starting to understand what I am talking about when I talk about Godzilla, because I've always been into the more serious ones. And for the first time ever, people are like, oh, that there is this other side to this series that we didn't even know. And it opened it up to where like it kind of became cool to talk about that movie, but still not necessarily the other ones. So getting into high school, in eighth grade, at the start of the year, I had been doing this gaming YouTube channel since 2011, where I'm, you know, setting my iPhone 4 up on a stack of Godzilla VHSs and filming my TV as I play Call of Duty. And in 2014, that Godzilla movie comes out. I was so into it. I was really into this group of YouTubers called the Sons of Serizawa that had Sazubar, Gorazard, Kaiju Noir, Super DM64, and I became really into that. And I think maybe Brandon Tenold had started to post some Godzilla stuff. So it was like, oh, there's people out there that can just talk about Godzilla online. I can do that. And I filmed a little video of a drawing I had made of Godzilla 2014 that I was pretty proud of at the time. Then I made a little stop motion video with some of the toys for that movie. And then one day I was like, I guess I never explained what this channel is. So I sat down and recorded a video of me explaining what the purpose of the channel was, which was supposed to be stop motion videos and following in Gorazard's footsteps. Thank God I didn't do that, of uploading footage from the movies.
Oh yeah, because
And
we know how well that goes, right?
yeah,
With
Gorazard's gone
copyright
through
stuff.
13 channels and whatever. So he's not the greatest inspiration because of that. So I for some reason I was like, I want to be the next Gorazard, or I really wanted to meet the Sons of Sarazawa and be on their podcast, and I wanted to like follow in Gorazard's footsteps. So I had been recording like little clips of the movies on my portable DVD player that I had that I could watch movies on, and because it obviously doesn't have like internet access, so it's like not a computer, but I could pretend it was, and I could watch movies on it whenever I wanted. And so I'd record clips of like Godzilla movies on my portable DVD player. I'd make these stop motion videos. And into high school, I had only uploaded like a couple things on that channel. And at some point I was really embarrassed of my stop motion videos and uploading clips from the movies. So I deleted all of it, which I really regret deleting those stop motion videos because I'm sure they're horrible, but it was like, it sucks that that's just lost into the ether. Right. But I kind of was like, I kind of like what they do on their podcast, where they talk about the movies rather than just make videos of them playing with toys. They talk about the movies. And I talked about the PS4 Godzilla game, which I got for my birthday in 2015. And I talked about the Gamera trailer. There was that Gamera trailer, which turned out to be the 50th anniversary short film. But I thought it was a trailer for a new movie. So I talked about that. There was a clip released for a new Toho Godzilla movie of all these people running in the streets. And like, what is that? So I talked about all these things. And one fateful day, I learned how to screen record with OBS. And I stole the microphone from Rock Band. We'd play Rock Band on Xbox. And I took the microphone and found out that the USB can plug into the computer, which means I can talk into a microphone on my computer. I don't even need to record my face anymore. So I made PowerPoint presentations showing like the images that I wanted to talk about, stitched them together, and recorded a video talking about the cast for Shin Godzilla. And there was this image of Shin Godzilla, and there were these leaked photos of this weird looking suit or animatronic, or what is it? We don't know, but this is Godzilla's design. And I made this video and it got like 1,000 views, which blew my mind. Like, who could have even thought that? Before now, my videos are pulling 2 views, and they're both me. And all of the sudden, 1,000 people have seen this video that I've done. And that is where like it's set in stone, like, oh, I should be talking about like updates about Godzilla movies, because very few people at the time were doing that. And like, it's hard to stay informed, especially about Shin Godzilla. Everybody's talking about, Legendary's Godzilla 2, and Gareth Edwards has left the movie and what's going to happen with that. But there's this other Japanese Godzilla movie that not as many people are talking about. And so I got really into making videos about Shin Godzilla. And that's where my channel for the first time picked up steam. And at some point during that, my best friend at school found it. And it was a big secret. Oh. He found it and he took it to my friends at school, and they made a Discord community making fun of me, like taking screenshots from my videos where I look silly or whatever. And I found out they did that. And for some reason, I wasn't upset with him, and I'm still not really upset with him, because I don't know, he's my best friend, and we have like a relationship where we like still to this day we make fun of each other all the time. Like bantering. So that felt fine. It felt fine for him to do it, but not the other people was what annoyed me, especially because like other people that I really wasn't all that good of friends with were then later added to that Discord. And so I got like really self-conscious, where I was like, what do I do? Do I delete all the videos, or what do I do? But I think it was that like one of my Shin Godzilla news videos pulled like 2,000 views, and someone asked, one of those people in the Discord community was like, I can't make fun of that. Like, you're pulling more views than I will ever get on anything I ever do. And it gave me this enormous ego booster. And then I reacted to the Shin Godzilla trailer, and I had so much fun making that video. And I finally learned how to edit, like like a little bit. So I learned how to do little bits of editing. And I uploaded that video. It did so well. There was so much positive feedback on it. And it, like, again, was this major ego booster where it was like, I don't care. I don't care. You can find my videos and make fun of them all you want. But at the end of the day, there are 2,000 people that told me I did a good job versus the 8 of you who told me I did a bad job. And it like gave me this confidence that I have never had before. Probably eventually too much, you know, like, because I grew up on YouTube, you can watch me grow through all the eras of like teenage angst and overconfidence and cockiness. And like, I'm sure there's tons of stuff where I like really cringe at, like, I just had so much growing to do. And then, you know, I steep into these, like, you know, I can watch as I like steep into these deep depressions where like all of a sudden I'm not confident anymore. And I'm really losing my confidence in myself and what I'm doing, and like questioning why I'm even doing all this, and eventually coming out of that. And like, it ebbs and flows. And fortunately and unfortunately, like, all of it's documented for people to go back and look at. And for me, it's nice because I can see I have grown so much.
Yeah.
It also makes me cringe to no end, but that's part of the growing experience.
You know, that's really thought-provoking. I have an archive channel where because I had like a really old YouTube channel, like way back in like 2007. So I had like these old videos that I've been kind of like finding and like just uploading to that archive channel just for fun. And at first I was really insecure about them too, but then I was like, you know what? Hey, this shows growth. Like we have grown so much on this platform over the years. And I think it's important for people to see that growth, right? Now I sometimes will periodically do like video reactions where I'm like watching an old cringy video being like, let's be conceited and watch myself be ridiculous 10, 15 years ago. And it's fun. Like, it's all in good fun.
Yeah.
But no, I think that I think what you just explained showcases, I think, how important the platform is. Because I also used to have people who would make fun of me for doing YouTube videos and stuff. But now that our respective channels have grown, and now that I've actually used these skills in my career in volunteer work that I've done, I'm just like, yeah, the people, like all you people who made fun of all this editing and all of this stuff, I use this day to day now. Like, it is a marketable skill that is transferable amongst different things. So I like to have the last laugh, so I guess that's why.
Do you have this experience where like, I can look back at my videos and see it. So like, you know, every year I do like a yearly update video where I'm like, it's been 1 year since the last update. It's been what, you know, it's an anniversary of when I started making when I officially launched into this channel. That very first day I sat down to record what even is this channel. And I can look back and see there are periods in there where I hate the person in the previous video, hate him. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's my year 2 or 2 years later video, or 3 years later. It's in I think it was the 2017 video where I can look at it and tell, like, that person in that video absolutely hates the person in the previous 2 videos, you know? And I can look at like 2020 and be like, that guy does not like the guys in the videos before that. But now when I look back at it, it's like, I don't hate any of those guys, thankfully.
Yeah.
And the ones that I'm most like, oh, how do you not get it? They're the ones that were upset with the previous ones, where it's like, it's all part of the growth. It's okay to be cringe. It's okay to be uneducated, as long as you grow. You need to grow, and you can't hate yourself for not having done the growth yet. You have to understand, like, you are going to change, and it's okay to not be perfect right away. It just, you know, you have to learn that it's okay to live with the fact that you used to be cringe or say dumb things. And as long as you like can reflect on that positively, that's what's important. So,
and no, I do see, I often used to look back on my old stuff, especially I think it was like 2013. 2013, it was a very strange year for me. I was like a manic mess was in a terrible relationship, and I was just kind of going nowhere. And I used to look back on that year, any video that year, and be like, that person is just not happy. Like, that person was really sad and depressed and not in a good headspace. But now I look back on that being like, I got through it. And that's what matters.
That's great.
What matters. And I think those of us who are content creators in the Godzilla fandom, I think we don't often realize that when we showcase that growth, that is, I think, representation for other people too. Because a lot of people on the internet are looking for ways to express themselves. They're looking for ways to make a difference, interact with the content that we like, the franchise itself, right? And I think if you can find your groove and if you can find that self-confidence, you can continue building onto that growth. So
yeah, like if I have any advice for like that perspective, if you're like one of those content creators who's starting out and you're like, I'm so cringe and all this stuff and this video is not good and whatever, that's okay. It's okay. And that's just part of the journey. And do not hate those videos and don't turn on yourself because of that. You just gotta understand that's part of the process. There's the point where I'm at right now. I feel like and it's like when you look at where the world was at, it makes a lot of sense. But from like very late 2019 until 2022, I was so unhappy. I was really miserable. It bleeds into every aspect of everything. That's the era where it's like I was constantly fighting with people, constantly engaging with negativity in ways that I just didn't need to. And I was feeling really insecure, and it mirrors like, every couple of years you go through stuff like that. We're like 2017 to the very start of 2018, I was in the same phase. I was really angsty. I was really upset. I was really, the negativity would just kill me online, and it would really get to me. And same thing with like 2020 through 2022. Like I look at that and I was giving into so much negativity, and now I'm really trying to like put my best foot forward. And even on something as small as like, there are movies that I'm very critical of that have come out recently, Godzilla movies that have come out recently that I'm very critical of. And I don't want to have an existence of somebody who just exists to be upset about that. It's okay to be like, I acknowledge that there are problems with this that I would like to see addressed in the next movie or whatever, but I don't need to live my life fixated on that. And I want to focus on the things that I like. I want to focus on positivity. I want to try and be a much more positive person and just live a happier life, And I do look back at those periods and I'm like, I see why I'm upset. Nobody online will understand, there's like things in your personal life that are going wrong. And like, there are these periods where I'm like, I really get why I'm upset, and I feel it. And I'm glad I made it through that.
And what's really cool about all of this that we just talked about? We both went from having zero community at a certain point in our lives to creating our own communities. And I think that showcases to everyone that if you, stay resolute about it all, if you feel isolated, you can also work toward building your own community, surrounding yourself with people who do support and uplift you. And I think that's important to remember. I think that's really thought-provoking. So
this is something that I find totally fascinating. The period of my life where the first time I was like really, really hit with a true hard depression that I didn't know I could make it out of is also ironically one of the periods that I'm so most fond of. And like, I have intense nostalgia for that period. And it was the beginning of 2019 it was like probably January through late March 2019. That was the first time I had like really every single day I'd be like, I don't even know who I am or if I can make it out of these feelings, and I would like sit there on the floor. Like I wouldn't have I just sit on the floor, like hands in my lap, just sitting like, who am I and what am I doing? And it's also the period that I'm the most fond for, because the thing that I did to get out of that was like, I had grown a stronger community online than I ever have ever, ever, even to this day, I do not have the community that I had in that brief window that I had created.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, for the first time, I started to go into my real life and be like, how can I get the same type of community in my real life that I have online? And I had, for the first time, pushed myself to make all of these friends and all of these experiences and stuff. And I'm so fond of those memories. And it's like, I had to get there because I was at my darkest place,
Mm-hmm.
is what pushed me into that. And I have the happiest memories because of it. And so it's like, I look back really fondly about, like, I was in a really bad place, but I was able to build a community that didn't even know they were supporting me through it,
Mm-hmm.
but they were. And I'm so fond of all of that. And it's like, I'm really proud of what I was able to do back in that time period, knowing what I was going through internally, and then being able to look at it and see, like, I was able to turn it into such a positive thing online. And I think I forgot how to do that between 2020 and 2022. I think I kind of forgot what the magic was that made that work. And I'm glad that I have finally figured it out again.
Wow. No, that is powerful. And I think it's just taking that next step forward that is important, right? When you're in a vulnerable place like that. And the truth is, I mean, in subtle ways, I think, I mean, through the content creation and the franchise and films itself, Godzilla is always along the journey with us too, whether we are aware of it or not.
Yeah.
And that's been something that I've talked about a lot on the show, is like, for me, mental health wise, Godzilla has always been that escape. So with that thought being in mind, I, purely for my nerdy amusement, over these years, which Godzilla films have developed into your favorites and why? I usually tell people to pick a top 3.
I have, okay, I have 2 really interesting answers. Well, that's really conceited. I have a list of my top 5 here, but I have a different answer that I think is really fascinating.
Okay, go for it.
This kind of blew my mind. I was talking to my dad probably about a year ago. I was getting ready to move out, and like, there's all these big life changes. It was like, oh my God, I'm gonna be on my own, and there's so much change, and I'm not in school for the first time in my entire life. I'm not in school, and I really am, like, I'm having to adjust to this very turbulent period of adjustment or whatever, there's so many changes at once. During the conversation with my dad, he said something about, like, childhood. And I was like, well, what's interesting is, like, when I think about being a little kid, the memories I have are not of my house or my family or my actual life. When I think about what did my childhood look like, it looks like a matte painting of a factory behind a fence that has been abandoned, that you can go find some vacuum tubes in, it is this. When I think about what does my childhood look like, it looks like all of these oil factories and all this pollution getting thrown up into the sky, and a kid in a yellow hat walking down in his booty shorts with his friends. And it, like, I told that to my dad, and I'm like, it really, for some reason, when I think about what did my childhood look like, I don't think of my actual childhood. I didn't know why, but I was like, I think of Godzilla's Revenge. That's what I think of, the setting of that movie. Not necessarily the plot even, but the setting, not even the monsters, but just Ichiro's life. That's what comes to mind. And my dad pointed out something that, like, blew my mind, where he was like, well, that makes sense, because when you were a really little kid, my mom and my dad got divorced, they moved apart, and I had these 2 different households. But the one thing that did not change between either household was that movie. I'd have that movie was my comfort movie. And that movie is that's like the stable point in my memories, So when I think about my childhood, what did my childhood look like? Well, it looks like the one thing that was consistent no matter where I was. And it was that. And it blew my mind, where it's like, oh my God, that's so why that movie has such a deep connection to me. And that's why that is the one that comes to mind, because that's like the clip show, the greatest, best hits of Godzilla's first adventures in a way. So it was like, I would rather watch Godzilla's Revenge than Godzilla versus the Sea Monster, because I get the best parts of Sea Monster and a bunch of other things too, you know?
Mm.
And so it was interesting to be like, oh my God, that's totally why that's what comes to mind.
Like a
And then other
stability
than
through
that,
consistency. Interesting.
it's so, yeah, it is. It's like, wow, that's crazy. So then I put this top 5 list together, and I really did not want to think about it. When I wrote these down, I was like, my first knee-jerk reaction, whatever one comes to mind. Because if I think about it, I can make an argument for pretty much all Godzilla movies that it could be in my top 5 favorites. But these were the first 5 that I wrote down. King Kong versus Godzilla, the 1962 version, Godzilla 1954, Godzilla -1, Mothra versus Godzilla 64, and Godzilla King of the Monsters 2019. And then this morning when I was in the shower, I was thinking about, like, that is a weird list, because I don't even know if that's not the list I normally give people. You know, it's missing Biollante, which is on my normal list. And it's kind of like, it was like, why did I pick those? Now I was thinking about, like, but those are my favorites in a way. Those are the ones that I circle back to the most. Those are probably my most rewatched. Those are, in many ways, those are my favorites. And I was like, what is even the common theme of those movies? You know, King Kong versus Godzilla and -1 couldn't be more different movies. They're so tonally different. And it's like, what is the through line? And it finally hit me. That one is kind of the sort of exception to the rule.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, all of those movies, it's about people trying to do better. You know, and that's what really speaks to me is Godzilla King of the Monsters. Mm-hmm. Mark Russell's a man who is just down. He's down. He's bitter. He's angry. He's lost faith. And it's about him trying to do better and learning to have, in that movie, in that case, it's like, you know, he learns to have faith in these higher powers again. And he learns to not be so resentful of what's happened to him. Mm-hmm. Mothra versus Godzilla is about a bunch of people who are trying to do the right thing, and the world itself isn't doing the right thing with them. And they could become very bitter. And yet they convince the people who have been wronged the most to join them in doing the right thing. Godzilla -1, Shikishima's journey, you know, a man who is like tormented by himself and learns to have this bravery and learns that it's okay to live in the pain of what's happened to you. Godzilla 54, same deal with Serizawa, being tormented by himself and then coming through it. King Kong versus Godzilla might just be the outlier just because that was my jam as a kid. And so that's the first one I always think of. So I don't know, but it like hit me today where I was like, that's the only through line I can picture in any of those movies.
This is why I love having these conversations, because I am one who infamously loves to analyze like every aspect of Godzilla films.
Me too.
And then like in these conversations, I end up learning some new theme or some new consistency that I had not thought of before. And that thought of like humanity trying to do better was not something that ever really occurred to me. And I think I do think that a lot of people see a lot of darkness in some Godzilla movies, but I think that there is a certain degree of human optimism, especially in the Showa era too.
Yes.
And even like, and I think that's why so many people gravitated to the human element of -1 is that like very subtle optimism that seems to manifest itself in Shikishima's journey throughout that whole film. Now, I am nerding out right now. So, and actually that's a perfect segue into the next question. So, favorite kaiju and characters, who and why?
Okay, I'll answer favorite characters first because it's a lot cleaner of a question for me. Like my favorite characters, and again, I really didn't want to think about it. I read the question, I wrote down the first characters that came to mind, and it's Shikishima probably is my favorite character of any of the Godzilla movies. It's either him or Noda in that movie, who I didn't write down, but Noda in particular speaks to me because he cares so deeply about everybody around him that he just can't even fathom like that he's putting them in this danger. You know, it like tears him up, but he knows that it's like everybody has to do this with him or it's not going to work. And I don't know, I love his kindness. I love Shikishima because I love that he goes from being like a guy who is so tormented he's not even sure if he's actually alive to a man who is willing to do anything he possibly can not just to save the people that he loves, but to be there, to save himself so that he can be there for them. You know, I don't think he pulls the ejector seat at the end of -1 because he wants to live, just because he kind of was like, oh, living's actually pretty neat. He pulls the ejector seat because he wants to live with the people he has been with. He wants to be there for Akiko. He wants to be there for his friends. And it's like that bond that really, I think, is beautiful. And on the exact opposite end of that coin, I love Haruo from the anime trilogy, who is like, I love that he is such a tragic character and that he was groomed for his own extinction without ever knowing it for decades, you know, for 2 decades. He's lived with a man who just tore him down. And while that movie is a very, very unoptimistic ending as far as he's concerned, him realizing that he himself is the last person alive who knows how to hate. And so that's why, and he's also literally got a demon in his brain. And so he knows he needs to go so that the world can live in a world without hate. I love that he is like Shikishima's exact mirror counterpart. The two of them have the same journey, but have different endings for different reasons. So those two characters really stick out to me. Both Serizawas really stick out to me over the years. I love the original Serizawa's beautiful sacrifice. I love the new Serizawa because he's so at peace with where the world is. He's so at peace with how things should be on a cosmic scale. And he has my favorite quote of the entire Godzilla series, of any Godzilla movie ever. Probably my favorite quote of any movie ever made. The quote of sometimes these moments of crisis are also potential moments of faith, I think is so beautiful to know. Like, and that's how I felt, you know, in 2019, when it was like, first time I was experiencing real depression that I didn't know how to get out of. And I didn't know if I had made any of the right choices my entire life. Like, what is this YouTube channel? Have I thrown away the opportunity to have a normal childhood? Like, did I throw away my teenage years, my high school years? There was all this stuff going on in my life where I was like, what am I doing? And it was also the moment where it was like, I really had to have faith in myself that I had my own best interests in mind. And like, I doing this because I love it. And I shouldn't stop doing something I love, but I also shouldn't be ignoring the fact that I want other things as well. Like I did want to have friends in high school, and I wanted to have experiences like that normal high school kids get to have. And so I was really compelled to all of a sudden engage with the people around me, but I wasn't willing to give up on the things that had made me happy up to that point. And that line really just speaks to me. And then very recently, Trapper in New Empire, because again, this is a man who is so at peace with where he is in the world, what the world itself is, the dangers of it, but the beauties of it. He's a man who, he's just so kind, and he's so nice and caring. And it really spoke to me, this kind of like gentle soul that he is. And that's really what I like about all of these characters, is they're all people who care so deeply about the people around them. And that's, I think, why those are my faves, which is also why my favorite monsters has really shifted. I was like big on the evil Godzilla as a kid, you know, like all I wanted was Godzilla to destroy everything because it's awesome and it's cool to see him be bad. And watching Kong Skull Island like changed my whole perspective on kaiju. And it was like, I loved watching Kong go so far out of his way to help those tiny little people who should be insignificant to him. And at the same time, like he just has this beautiful journey in the film where it's like, he knows man and monster should not coexist, but you can tell he wants a connection, but he's willing to put himself aside to help others. And at the end of the movie, he leaves Weaver and Conrad, and it's because he knows at the end of the day, these two worlds should not mix. He's trying to protect them from himself and himself from them. I thought it was so beautiful. And Kong, like literally in one viewing, went from being a monster that I was pretty cool. Kong was cool and all, but Godzilla was my jam, to all of a sudden I was like, I get it. I understand Kong on a level I never have. Godzilla versus Kong, I saw so much of myself reflected in Kong in that movie. And so I've really latched on to Kong over the past couple years. And Mothra, my unexpected one in 2019, 2019 was like, I've always liked Mothra. She's always cool, but I kind of had like the little kid mentality of like, well, how a big moth should not be able to beat Godzilla in a fight, you know? And it would like, but which is funny because I've always been totally cool with King Kong kicking Godzilla's ass in 1962. I've always been chill with that. And I've been like, yeah, well, that's, you know, he's King Kong. That's what he does. But Mothra, I was like, that doesn't make sense to me that a big moth would be able to do that. And in 2019, like that, there's so much beauty and grandiose to Mothra in her limited screen time in that movie that it was like, oh my God, I get it. I see it. And I became this newfound appreciation for Tokyo SOS's Mothra in particular, and Mothra 1961 as well. I love that version of the character. And it's like, oh, I finally have really latched on to Mothra and Kong. And while I like Godzilla as the villain, and I prefer Godzilla to be the villain, he's no longer the main thing I'm loving about those movies. I'm really more drawn to the human characters. And I think it is because I'm really trying to, you know, I'm inspired by people who live positive lives, and I'm inspired by these kaiju that are like these beautiful presences, and they've got these great nobility and these great hearts. And I'm inspired by these characters who try so hard to do good and to do the right thing. And I'm really inspired by all that. And it's not like, I like it when Godzilla is the villain because he tends to bring out the best in the characters around him. And when Godzilla is the hero, he does all the work for them. And he also typically, if Godzilla is the hero, doesn't get much depth as a character. He just does the right thing because he's the big hero, and that's it.
Right,
and that's cool. But you don't get to see the characters around him become better because of it, typically. And that's, I think, why I really latch on to Godzilla as the villain, is because he like brings out the best in everybody around him, whether it's Shikishima or King Kong. You know, Godzilla brings the best out in people around him because he's such a horrible dude, and I love it.
No, one thing I really like about the MonsterVerse notably is that Godzilla is, I look at Godzilla more so as an anti-hero in the MonsterVerse as opposed to a villain, because I just think of him as being like this just grumpy, inconvenienced old man who just doesn't like people on his lawn, or excuse me, Titans, Kaiju on his lawn. But then like you see like him go through these changes where he's like, but I need help. I need some support. And like, and I think this really manifests especially in the two most recent MonsterVerse films, which, you know, I know they have like their degrees of criticism they receive, but like, I really think that they did an interesting job at developing the kaiju in their own respective ways, including their motivations, right?
I really latch on to that King of the Monsters 2019 version of Godzilla, where I was something so like, again, because I think it goes along with this kind of sort of like bringing out the faith of Mark Russell. And it was also, you saw it reflected in Godzilla in the other end, where Godzilla was like, you can't even begin to fathom that he would have any connection to us. And there are these glimpses where you see there is such a gentle soul inside of him. That moment where he's at the submarine and he looks down at him and he like has this eye-to-eye connection with them. And then he lets them join him in the battle against King Ghidorah. It was, and the moment where Serizawa touches him, you know, he looks at him and there's like this connection between them. It was so, I thought, so beautiful. And it kind of makes me sad to see that Godzilla in the next movie became a bully, you know, where it was like, he had such a gentleness to him. And then he's a bully in the very next film. And he bullies my guy. You know, he bullies King Kong simply because Kong's vibing by himself. It was like, damn it.
I mean, we know that I'm a shameless Mothra stan any day. But like I think my favorite scene is the scene in Godzilla X Kong New Empire where they're fighting in Egypt and then Mothra comes and she's like, no. Pipe down, boys. We need to get some shit done. We see a lot of humanization in the kaiju in that brief interaction they have. Like they took that brief interaction and just ran with it. And I thought that it was monumental. I remember like I watched that in the theater and I was like, I don't know if I was like wanting to cheer or sob or all of the above, probably both. It was so great. It was so great. There I go, having another Mothra tangent, right? Anyway, thank you for listening to part 1 of my conversation with Dman 1954. The continuation of our conversation will be next week, and I hope that you will tune in for that as well. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel, click like, all of that jazz. Go subscribe to Man1954 if you haven't yet. And most importantly, do not forget, my friends, to keep standing tall. Talk soon.